pounding on my door hit so hard it rattled the glass. Midnight. I opened it to find two cops on my porch, flashlights raised, standing in a halo of porch light that lit up the tall maple trees behind them. And wedged between those beams of light was Delilah Crane, the Willow Bend HOA president, dressed in a blinding neon coral robe, sparkly gold visor, and feathered slippers that didn't match anything in nature. "Arrest him," she declared, pointing at me like a witch-hunting season had begun. "He hacked my Wi-Fi." One officer sighed like he'd aged 10 years on my doorstep. "Sir," he said, "your neighbor claims you tampered with her internet connection." Delilah grinned. "Oh, we're just getting started." By sunrise, Willow Bend looked like a postcard, sunlight pouring through the tall oaks, sprinklers misting the lawns, birds hopping along the fresh-cut grass. And, right in the middle of that peaceful green paradise, stood Delilah Crane, turning it into her personal circus. She'd planted herself beneath the giant crepe myrtle at the end of the cul-de-sac, wearing a lime green sequin blazer over yoga pants, chunky turquoise earrings swinging as she waved a holographic clipboard at a small crowd of sleepy neighbors. "Community Wi-Fi matters," she announced, voice carrying across the bright lawns. And Marcus destroyed it. Selfishness spreads like mold. I stepped outside hoping the morning air would cool my nerves. It didn't. Delilah spotted me instantly. "Perfect," she said, marching across my lawn like she owned every blade of grass. "We're reinstating the shared network. You'll reset your password to the community standard." "There is no community standard," I said. "In my neighborhood there is," she corrected, shoving the glittery clipboard toward me. "We all share resources. That's how Willow Bend stays beautiful." I work in cybersecurity. One false rumor can wreck my career, so hearing her rewrite reality in front of half the street made my stomach tighten. Delilah smiled wide. "And Marcus, you don't get to break the rules I built." By midday, the neighborhood smelled like cut grass and warm pine, but my mailbox looked like a crime scene. Glitter-covered envelopes spilled out onto my sunlit walkway. The breeze rustled through the maples overhead while I crouched to collect Delilah's handwriting. "Shame on you for breaking community unity. God saw what you did to the Wi-Fi." One note had tiny stickers of angry cats around my name. A fake petition followed "Make Marcus restore the community signal," with the same 12 signatures written in different pen colors. Neighbors pretended to admire their flower beds as I walked by, but their eyes followed me. Under the shade of the sycamore near the coffee stand, two women whispered, "That's him, the hacker." At the grocery store, a dad tugged his kid behind a line of ferns when I passed. The knot formed in my stomach, right there, tight, hot, unforgiving. I'd lived under these green canopies for months without a ripple of drama, yet somehow Delilah had turned the whole street into her audience, and they were buying every word. 2 evenings later, as golden light filtered through the oaks, I walked past the kitchen window and froze. Delilah and a board member in a salmon polo were standing in my side yard, half hidden among my hydrangeas, their heads practically pressed to my living room window. The only thing louder than the cicadas was my blood pressure. I stepped outside, looking for something. They jerked upright like raccoons caught in a pantry. "We're conducting a compliance observation," Delilah said, smoothing the sequins of her electric blue blazer. "Your router is emitting abnormal signal strength. That violates our stability expectations." "There are no expectations," I replied, "because you don't regulate private networks, and you're trespassing." She strutted forward, heels sinking into the damp grass beneath the shade of my oak tree. "Marcus, this community thrives because I maintain standards. If your equipment destabilizes bandwidth, I intervene." I'd lived through this before. My previous HOA once fined me for using the wrong brand of mailbox screws. That same tone rang in Delilah's voice. Now, dictatorship disguised as helpfulness. "You mean you want access to my internet?" I said. Delilah smiled like someone snapping a twig. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." That night, the air drifted cool through my open office window, rustling the tall pines along the fence. I sat down to distract myself with work, but the router panel glared at me from the corner of my screen. So I opened it. There it was. A device I'd never seen. Brand unfamiliar. Connected right now. I'd changed the password twice. A cold wave crept up my spine. I drilled into the packets. This wasn't someone checking email. It was a highway of encrypted logins, banking dashboards, crypto trades, password resets, the kind of traffic no innocent user stumbles into. I opened a map of signal strength. Each device had a footprint, a shape, a signal echo. And this one wasn't bouncing off my walls. It was coming from next door. Delilah's house, her coral-painted sunroom, her climbing ivy and perfectly trimmed hedges. My whole profession built on trust depended on me never being mistaken for the villain. One fraud report routed through my line, and I'd spend the next year proving I wasn't the hacker. The knot in my stomach tightened. Someone under Delilah's roof wasn't just mooching internet. They were committing actual cybercrime. And every breadcrumb pointed straight to my address. I wasn't sleeping. The crickets outside hummed wind, brushed the treetops, and I sat surrounded by log files glowing on my monitor like warning signs. I packaged everything, timestamps, packet routes, screen captures, and submitted it through a federal cybercrime reporting portal I never thought I'd touch in my career. An agent called the next afternoon. His tone was calm, clipped professional. He asked what tools I'd used, how I isolated the device, my exact router model. He didn't sound surprised. He sounded like someone who had been waiting for confirmation. "Do not confront them," he said. "Monitor only. Let behavior continue unchanged." "I'm the one whose network is being used," I answered. "If this blows back, that's why we're acting quickly," he replied. "But don't alert them. We need your logs to match ongoing data." I'd once watched a coworker lose everything over a false cyber accusation. That memory wasn't leaving my head now. If the wrong person got blamed, my life could implode before morning. I needed proof that couldn't be argued, twisted, or claimed as coincidence. So I built a honeypot. A decoy network slipped under the shade of my real one, Willow Bend guest. To anyone sniffing for an easy target, it would look like an unlocked candy jar. I placed a fake folder labeled finance, packed with honey tokens that would scream the moment they were touched. Then I waited. The late afternoon sun dipped behind the row of willow oaks lining the street. Leaves shimmered, sprinklers hissed across emerald lawns, kids laughed somewhere down the block. Delilah's yard glowed with hanging lanterns and overwatered begonias. 10 minutes later, my alert system chirped once. New connection. Same strange signature. Same device. It slid straight into the bait files without hesitation. It wasn't guessing, it recognized the terrain. This thing had been stealing from people long before I changed my password. I printed the logs. Page after page spilled into a stack almost an inch thick, the printer scraping rhythmically in my quiet, green-framed office. Every timestamp placed the traffic inside that neon HOA president's pastel house. I don't like confrontation. I moved to Willow Bend for peace, shade, and fresh air. But Delilah had blown past simple entitlement and straight into danger. At some point, you stop hoping for calm, and you knock on the door, holding evidence that can collapse someone's world. I stepped outside, crossed the bright lawn, and headed straight for Delilah's porch. Delilah's house sat under a canopy of glossy oak leaves, flower beds exploding in color along the walk. I'd barely reached the porch when the door flew open. She stood there in a hot pink kimono robe with gold cranes on it, sparkly visor back on, as if the universe had assigned her a costume budget instead of common sense. "If you're here to beg," she said, "I'm busy." I held up the stack of printed logs. "I'm here because someone in this house is using my line to rob people." The smile faltered. "What are you talking about? These are connection records," I said. "Banking logins, crypto wallets, all routed through my fiber, all originating from inside your walls." Her eyes flicked over the pages, then over my shoulder to the green, quiet street. A jogger slowed under the elm, 2 houses down, pretending to stretch while staring. Delilah straightened, forcing a laugh. "You tech people love your little graphs. None of this means anything." "It means," I said, "that when the bank or police trace it back, my name pops up." A floorboard creaked above us. A male voice floated down. "Mom, what's going on?" Delilah's head snapped toward the stairs. "Eli," she shouted, "get down here. Now." Eli came down the staircase, clutching a laptop to his chest like a life vest. Hoodie, pajama pants, socked feet sliding on the polished wood. He took one look at the papers in his mother's hand and went a shade lighter. "What is that?" he asked. "Our neighbor Delilah," said voice sharp, "thinks someone here is a criminal. Tell him he's wrong." I held out a page. "These logs tie an unknown device to my network. Same device has been hitting banks and exchanges for weeks. The signal profile fits this house." Eli's grip on the laptop tightened. The screen edge dug into his forearm. That's not mine," he said too quickly. "Give me the computer," Delilah ordered. "Mom, now." He hesitated. That was all it took. She lunged, yanked it from his hands, and thunked it onto the console table under a framed quote about kindness. "Let's clear this up," she muttered, flipping it open. Her fingers flew across the trackpad. Windows popped up in a cascade. A text file full of usernames and passwords. A browser tab with a control panel of linked cards and crypto wallets. Another screen listing email logins with neat little check marks beside verified. The air in the entryway went heavy. Eli swallowed. It's not like it looks okay, it's just sharing. People share accounts all the time. I didn't bother answering. Delilah stared at the balances, the transaction histories, the notes in the margins. When she finally spoke, her voice came out thin. "Elijah," she whispered, "how long have you been doing this?" Before he could answer, 3 hard knocks shook the decorative wreath. A deep voice called through the door, calm and unmistakable. "Federal Bureau of Investigation. We need to speak with Elijah Crane." Everything in the house froze. The soft whir of the AC, the faint birdsong outside, the distant hiss of a sprinkler gone under that one sentence. Delilah turned on me, eyes wild. "You called them, I sent logs," I said. Apparently I wasn't the only one watching. Eli's shoulders sagged like somebody cut his strings. "They wouldn't be here if they didn't already know, Mom." The knocking came again, harder. "Mrs. Crane, we have a warrant. Open the door." Panic detonated. "No. No, Delilah muttered, backing away from the entry like it was radioactive. "We are not letting them ruin your future because our neighbor can't share." She grabbed the laptop off the table and jammed it into my hands so fast I almost dropped it. "There," she said, breathing hard. "They'll find it with him. He's the one obsessed with networks. He's the hacker." I stared at her. "You are trying to hand me the evidence in front of a federal warrant. You had access to our Wi-Fi?" She snapped. "You probably set him up, Mrs. Crane." The voice at the door sharpened. "Last warning before we make entry." Eli squeezed his eyes shut. "Mom, stop, please." She didn't. She spun, bolted down the hallway in a blur of pink silk, and vanished toward the back of the house. A second later, a crash of shattering glass exploded from that direction, followed by a muffled, pained groan. One agent shouldered the front door open. 2 men in vests swept in weapons, low clearing rooms with practiced moves. I lifted my hand slightly, laptop held out. "Not mine," I said. "I'm the complainant." One agent took it already, sliding it into an evidence bag. Another moved toward the back, then paused at the shattered rear window. "Got a female on the lawn, tangled in lawn ornaments," he called. "Says she's innocent." "Of course she does," the lead agent muttered. Minutes later, Eli sat cuffed on the front steps, head down, framed by Delilah's overflowing flower beds and the tall, whispering oaks overhead. Neighbors peered from behind porch columns and blooming shrubs, phones half raised, no one sure if filming made them complicit. The lead agent turned to me. "Mr. Hall, your data lined up with months of our own tracking. This kid's been hitting victims in 3 states. Behind him, 2 agents hauled Delilah to her feet from a massacre of broken garden gnomes and flamingos. Dirt streaked her robe, her visor hung crooked. She jabbed a finger toward me anyway. "He's the real hacker," she shrieked. "He framed my baby." The agent didn't bother looking. "We've got our guy, ma'am," he said. For once, Willow Bend's self-appointed queen shouted orders into the leafy air, and nobody moved. The flashing red-blue lights rippled across the tall oaks lining Willow Bend, turning the trunks into shifting stripes of color. My quiet street, usually filled with the scent of jasmine and lawn clippings, looked like a movie set now. Neighbors stood frozen on porches, half hidden behind hanging ferns and potted palms, pretending to adjust wind chimes while watching everything unfold. Agents moved in calm, methodical circles, photographing Eli's laptop on the hood of a black SUV, marking positions in the trampled flower beds, speaking in low tones beneath the rustling tree canopy. Delilah sat on the grass in her ruined pink kimono, glittery visor askew, surrounded by toppled flamingos and cracked garden gnomes. Her mascara streaked down both cheeks, leaving trails that glimmered in the lights. One agent approached me, flipping a notepad shut. "We'll need you to send the original logs tonight, Mr. Hall. The digital packet you submitted gave us justification, but what you printed here?" He gestured to the evidence bag. "That sealed it." "Yeah," I said, exhaling into the cool night. "I didn't expect any of this." "Victims rarely do," he said, "and neither do neighbors." Down the street, the breeze lifted through the elm branches, scattering faint shadows across the pavement. The neighborhood had gone so quiet, even the cicadas held their breath. That's when George shuffled over. Retired khaki shorts always smelled faintly of mulch. George was the only neighbor who'd ever said more than 3 words to me. He stopped at my driveway, glancing from the FBI SUV to the crushed garden ornaments to the neon disaster that was Delilah. "Well," he murmured, "looks like things finally caught up with her." "I just changed my Wi-Fi password," I said. "That's all I did." George huffed a small laugh. "Funny thing about people like her, they spend years building a wall of nonsense. All it takes is one person refusing to play along, and the whole thing collapses." Behind him, 2 agents lifted Eli from the steps and guided him into the open SUV. His shoulders, slumped face, pale hoodie bunched at his wrists where the cuffs pinched. For a moment the street was nothing but the sound of the vehicle engine humming under the oak branches. Delilah lurched to her feet, stumbling out of the mess of garden decor. "You can't take him," she yelled. "He didn't mean any harm. It's just numbers, just accounts. You can't ruin his life." The lead agent kept his voice level. "Ma'am, your son has been siphoning funds across multiple states. People lost savings. This isn't small." She swung toward me as though gravity itself spun her. "This is your fault. If you'd shared the internet like everyone else, none of this would have happened." You, the agent, stepped between us. "Ma'am, enough. Your statements will be taken properly later. For now, you're not under arrest, but you're strongly advised to stop speaking." Delilah froze, mid-rant jaw trembling. Her gaze bounced from the SUV to her shattered gnomes to the officers cataloging evidence. Her kingdom, the one she built as she'd always said, was crumbling under the soft glow of street lamps and the whispering willow oaks above us. The agent beside me lowered his voice. "She'll face her own fallout. The victims' banks will pursue restitution. HOA may pursue separate civil claims. Tonight's just the beginning for their household." A murmur passed through the neighbors, watching from the hedges and porches. People who had whispered behind coffee cups earlier now stood staring at Delilah with wide, uncertain eyes, like they were seeing the actual person beneath the visor and sequins for the first time. The SUV doors closed with a solid click. Delilah let out a choked sound, half sob, half fury. "Eli," she screamed, running toward the curb. "Eli, tell them you didn't mean it. Tell them." She tripped on a fallen gnome hat, stumbled, and caught herself on the mailbox. Under the streetlight, her robe glittered with crushed sequins and grass stains. The SUV pulled away slowly, tires crunching over the quiet street. Neighbors parted like a tide as the vehicle eased past them under the cathedral-like canopy of oaks. Delilah leaned on her mailbox chest, heaving eyes hollow. For the first time since I'd moved in, she didn't have a single command left to give. The agents finished packing equipment and shutting tailgates. The flashing lights dimmed one by one until only warm porch bulbs and soft yard lamps remained. The night returned to its normal rhythm, the chirp of crickets, the swaying trees, the wet scent of freshly watered lawns drifting from sprinklers down the block. George clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Looks like peace might finally settle in around here." "Feels strange," I admitted. "Quiet. Real quiet. That's what normal sounds like, son," he said. The last FBI SUV rolled away, turning onto the main road. A breeze rustled through the trees above, scattering shadows across my driveway. Delilah stood alone in her yard, surrounded by the wreckage of her own theatrics. I turned toward my front door, pulled it shut behind me, and sat at my desk. My laptop woke with a familiar soft glow. I clicked the Wi-Fi icon. Full bars. Stable. Mine. For the first time since I'd moved to Willow Bend, the network and the neighborhood felt completely blissfully untangled. I leaned back listening to the quiet rustle of the trees outside and smiled. One password, one night, and the whole circus finally folded.